Good afternoon, evening, morning, whenever you may or may not be watching this. It's just a follow-up post, really. I put something on the Facebook page. I wanted to know your thoughts. I've steered it as though it's talking about the Cheltenham Festival next year, which ultimately it is, but it's also to get an idea of where we're thinking in terms of each division. So 2 mile novices, 2.5 mile novices, 3 mile novices, whether that's over fences, over hurdles, how we're going to look at the old guard to see where they're going to be going, stayers, champion hurdles, your gold cups, the Ryanairs, all those bits and pieces. Now there is going to be I want to say proper, there's probably going to be a more in-depth episode that's going to come out after this, which is more geared to specifically talking about thoughts, what might be the right ways to be thinking for certain races and bits and pieces like that. But because I've consolidated the comments that came in, quite a few of you guys got involved with that, so that's brilliant. Just to give you all a bit of a view to where people's heads are at, and it will sort of tie in a bit with where the markets are as well. So this was the post on the Facebook page. I'm going to pull up Odds Checker on the right hand side so we can go through the races, looking at the prices, the markets where they're at. There won't be too many surprises, I don't think, in terms of what people have been throwing in there, and what the betting is, but it's just a quick one to show you how it is consolidated. So what we'll do is, I haven't sorted the pivot in the Excel sheet to have it listed for race order, but we know what they are. So for the Supreme, we can see the majority of people have gone for Fernie Hollow. Funny enough, he's favourite for the Supreme over here. We've got Malone Road in there, second selection. We've got Flint to Satra. We've got Ballyadam. Now, again, I'll go into this in more detail in a second episode, which I'm going to get some thoughts from some other people in there as well. But there's comments and bits and pieces that have been said by trainers, connections that might lead towards targets for certain horses. And on that, it gives a bit of a steer of where horses are probably going to end up running. Things like Ballyadam, I feel like there's been comments made by Davy Russell suggesting that he's going to be Ballymore bound. That again might be suggested in the market price that he is now. Things like that. And also there's speculation with Malone Road glass legs, whether they might think of a champion hurdle decision, like's happened with novices previously. We saw Darva Star last year with the age that he was. We saw Moon Racer did it a while back. So there's those sort of things to think about as well. It's just something for another episode to go into a bit more depth. This is basically to give you guys a feel where it is. I'll try and talk a little bit about each race anyway, just to let you know my initial thoughts. And then we've got Flint to Satra, one that we've suggested that takes up a decent slice of the pie, is there. Now, Appreciate It is a short-priced runner in here. You'll see as the votes go through, Appreciate It did get a bit of a percentage here, but he's one of those that's prominent in all of the novice hurdle divisions, which is a typical thing that does happen year after year. And then there's a few other names that are mentioned in here that might appear later on. It's also worth remembering, again, I'll elaborate this on the next episode much more, but again, it's important to remember when we look back at the last few seasons worth of winners of the particular race we're talking about, or looking at the division as a whole. If we're looking at the Supreme in isolation, we're thinking of Shishkin. Did we know much about Shishkin from the season before from bumpers? Well, yes, we did. Did we know much about Abacadabras from the season before? Yes, well, we did. He ran well in the champion bumper, etc., etc. This lets us know that we're sort of... You can see why the market's shaped up the way that it is, and you can see why people are thinking the way that they are. So we can see it splits. A good percentage of it is split between these four horses. Now, like I say, Ballyadam potentially might be going for another race, but this is where I've mentioned in previous posts about block bets, and that's something that I'll touch on slightly towards the end of this, and then again I'll elaborate after. We'll do further episodes. So Supreme's in. That's where you guys are thinking about things. We'll look at the Arkle. Actually, do you know what? We'll go Ballymore. We'll do the novice hurdle. No. We'll do race card order. Sorry, I'll leave it as that. So Arkle as we're moving in. Shishkin, obviously the overwhelming selection within there. 74% of the votes that have come in are suggesting that he's the one to be on. Captain Guinness got quite a good few mentions. I think the general vibe from people around him is it was obviously unlucky within the Supreme itself. Could be a big price value alternative, and obviously he's 20s compared to the 4s that Shishkins is available. Now, again, if we think to recent years, Arkle winners, would you have put the kettle on as the Arkle winner? Probably not. But based on what we see for previous years or years before that, the Supreme has been a really good indicator towards this. We know that Nicky Henderson targets the race. We know that he said that's where he's going to go. And he does look an absolute beast, doesn't he? Now, you have to take into consideration that Abacadabras wasn't far apart. Abacadabras features here as a big price runner for an Arkle, and I think that's typically because they look like they're going to be staying over hurdles with him. And it's interesting to see some of the other marks in there. People are saying Envoy could go and win an Arkle. People all say that Envoy could win an RSA. Classical Dream, potentially a bit forgotten, went champion hurdle last year. Everyone was saying they're excited to see him jump a fence. So, nice to see those sort of thoughts in there as well. But, all of those sort of things said, it is, with the market again. Now, Elixir today does take up a bit more of the market than some other bits, and we know that he ran quite well in the Supreme as well. 33 poke, another one from a sort of bigger price angle. Again, you can see the lines in with that, so I wouldn't expect there to be too many shocks that come out of this. But there are maybe further down in the smaller percentages we might see some interesting ones. Now, Champion Hurdle Division, unsurprising really that we all think that Goshen would have won the Triumph. He would have, wouldn't he? Let's be fair. He's being smashed up already with the champion hurdle market. We can see in there that his price is shortening. Abacadabras that I mentioned there, that I think he's probably staying over hurdles. His price has actually drifted out a little bit on, even from me just looking at this over the last few days. I don't know whether that's an enhancement somewhere or whether that's an incorrect marker. I think looking at this, it probably looks an incorrect marker. 7s is the price on there, isn't it? I don't know whether there's some sort of special boost somewhere anyway, but anywho, and you can still get 6s, Goshen, with Boyle Sport. Anywho, the markets will obviously fluctuate as the season goes on. Pre-season, they don't tend to move too much. It might just be if there's any tender follows or people are putting videos such as this out there. But, Goshen's there with nearly half of the votes coming in, suggesting that he's the champion hurdle winner. I personally would just try and caveat that with, the whole 4-year-old thing. Now, yes, Espoir Delan went and did it, but he didn't go to Cheltenham. He missed that. Maybe that was a benefit for him. Goshen's got to still prove himself in open company. I think he has already proved himself at Cheltenham. That's fair to say. Sounds like Gary Moore's going to go for a little flat spin for him as well. I don't know what the stats or trends are for a horse to win a champion hurdle that's run on the flat the same season. I don't know those sorts of things. They'd be things I might look into, but we treat each horse in their own right. Interesting that with EP01, who won it last year, she was a nice winner of it. We can all probably agree that it might have been probably a substandard renewal, but she did win it nicely. It's surprising that only 10% of the guys that have voted, guys and girls, are still latching onto EP01, but let's be fair, fairly short, really. Abacadabras, this is the one that I feel like, for the market share we've got in here, 25%, pretty much of the votes are coming in there. I think he looks like the sort of line in there, but I've touched on this on many occasions before. Gigginstown 2 milers, it's just something that I latch and I don't particularly like about it. Then there's other bits and pieces that are in here. I feel like there might be some at bigger prices that are interesting. Saint-Noir, we've got other bits and pieces that have been mentioned. Good old Bouverdare's back up in there. Saudi obviously never made it to the festival. So it's just interesting to see the sort of votes that are in there and what people are thinking. Again, it's a small enough sample, but we've got enough in here that I think it's sort of shows the general viewing. And again, it matches in with the prices that we've got dotted around here. Mares Hurdle, also on the Tuesday. Now, this is one that I think it's important to look at the price perspective on this. So Shishkin was an overwhelming favourite. He's about 4-1 poke for an Arkle. Now, obviously, he hasn't jumped a fence. None of them have. He fell over hurdles, bits and pieces. But we're looking at the percentage split here. Now, if we were talking about the festival last year, which we did, everyone thought Benny DeJu was going to win. I thought she'd hack up. And Honeysuckle obviously did there's tactical question marks about the ride that Paul Townend gave Benny DeJu. So potentially we were all saying and thinking at the time that Benny could have probably got the better of Honeysuckle. Now, with Benny, there's a few votes for different races in here. So she features in the Mares Hurdle, the Mares Chase, the Stayers. She's one of those that you wouldn't be fully confident of her target this year, more so than last year. I thought she was definitely going Mares last year. But yeah, she's overwhelming, Honeysuckle. They've said that she's going to stay over hurdles. We know Kenneth Alexander's into the Mares programme, so you would think that they would definitely be going Mares Hurdle again. I know there was talk of Champion Hurdle last year. If there was a time she was going to do it, she would have done it last year, I think. So to me, the 7-2 about Honeysuckle, given the overwhelming views from people in here, I would tend to agree. I think that's massive. And also with the Benny DeJu thing, the fact that there's a Mares Chase in there, she's a decent chaser. The fact that there's a Stairs, there's other options. You'd feel like if Benny DeJu was taken out of this market, then all of a sudden Honeysuckle's quite a short surprise. So again, she's well found in the market anyway. But if you're talking about how people are feeling in the majority about certain races, then you'd be fairly comfortable if you thought Shishkin, Honeysuckle at this point was a reasonable double, and you couldn't put anyone off of that. It would pay you in and around 20 to 1. Now, the National Hunt Chase, of course, this far out, it's going to be difficult to know who's going to be targeting it, but it's nice to see the types of horses we're liking in there. What I find interesting with this particular race is that you get RSA horses, and you'll have National Hunt Chase horses, especially now they've dropped a couple of furlongs off the National Hunt Chase. You tend to find the types of horses that run in this would be probably capable of cracking it in either of those events. We also know that Gigginstown gear some horses towards it. There's certain trainers like your Gordon Elliott that we know will target a horse towards it. Willie Mullins is the same as well, and I think that's probably why Aoun is such a popular one for this distance race. I don't really know with the Rikis about their record in this race, or even having runners in the National Hunt Chase, to be honest. So that'll be a slight caveat with it. But again, I'll cover these things in more depth in a later episode. But we can see we get 33 to 1 poke there, and it is the majority share. But we've got to remember this is a very big split across the races. It's very far out. But, if we're talking block bets again and we're looking at big prize horses, Aoun would be potentially one that you could stick in there. Now, Monkfish, it's another one, another Riki horse. Obviously won the Albert Bartlett last year. You'd think he was more RSA bound than this, but maybe that's where the voting for Aoun's come in, that maybe we're thinking that's happened. Maybe there's been a comment out there somewhere, which hopefully I'll be able to dig out if there has been, but those could be the lines of thought in there for why those two might be prominent in the betting. Column of Fire, decent horse, another Gigginstown line in there. Same with Fury Road. Fury Road is a really, really nice type. This probably looks like the type of race for him, but I would suggest that he's probably good enough for an RSA. And then we've got the two bigs, the big breakaway, the big getaway. Now, we don't know where they're going to end up, but you can see 25's about them. Now, at the beginning of the last season, you could back carefully selected at 33 to 1 to win any race. So where I mentioned the National Hunt Chase, the RSA, lots of these horses are potentially talked about in both veins, and it could be worth looking at any race markets. Now, it's trappy with them to get block bets in because lots of bookies won't let you do it, so that's where you might end up playing the National Hunt Chase RSA block between a couple of them, but I'll go on to that later. Again, this is more just a view of horses that are in there. We've got latest exhibition, Commander of Fleet. I think Captain of Fleet probably should have been Commander of Fleet, but they're the way we're thinking at the moment, and it's not really surprising. We've got a 12 to 1 fav here that might not go for the race. We've got Time Hill that's going to be going over the Stayers Hurdle. It pitches in Fury Road and latest exhibition as 16 to 1 joint favs this far out for a National Hunt Chase. It shows the nature of the beast, but we'll see how that goes. Ballymore, slightly more. To where I'd expect it to be, in the fact that Ballyadam, I think there's been comments out there about it, and we can see within the betting in here, we've got Appreciate It, Fernie Hollow, Ballyadam, all around about the same sort of price, and they're taking around about the same sort of market share or percentage vote share here. Bob Ollinger's one that gets quite a good mention, and again, price-wise, it fits in with what's going in with everything else. There's a few dotted about in here at prices that obviously haven't been voted on. Not a great number of votes that came in. I think we were talking 20, 30 a race probably. But there's plenty of horses that might be down at slightly bigger prices that could be interesting. I'm glad Your Darling gets a mention here. I mean, Malone Road's obviously been given a vote here. I say obviously. I think he's been given a vote here more because it was the Envoy route. Don't really know the trail of thought of everyone's thinking, but that's what I would suggest it's towards that. But we've got some real nice bumper types that are in there from last year that potentially could be coming here. And it's an interesting race. We know it is the Ballymore. Obviously, with Envoy last year being so well fancied for this, think about 11, 12 to 1 this time of year. Envoy Lamb was. I feel like the Ballyadam Fernie Hollow angle is one huge thing. If Fernie Hollow were to go for the Supreme, Appreciate It may be more suited to a Ballymore anyway, and obviously that's Willie Mullins, not just the ownership thing that is with Ballyadam and Fernie Hollow. Lots of things to think, but when we come into the next episode, I will tell you what I think the horses' targets will be. Doesn't mean I'll get it right, but I probably will. We'll move on to the RSA. So we've already touched on a few of the horses that will feature in here from looking at the National Hunt Chase. I feel like this would be probably better split than it actually is. I feel Monkfish is the winner of this race, and I mean, I haven't gone too deep into bits and pieces of it so far. I've long been a big fan of the Albert Bartlett as a race. I like the Albert Bartlett runners staying over hurdles for another season for the typical makeup that those types of horses are. But Monkfish, the way that he won last season was really, really impressive. And he just looks a proper chaser. It just looks like he would improve bundles for a fence. I think the 10 to 1 about him looks decent, and percentage split share here. I think people are on the right lines, to be fair. Latest exhibition deserves to be right up there. Um, I feel like if he was going to win something major, it would have been last year. And this is where the problem, not so much a problem, but this is where the shame is that we missed your Aintree and your Punchestown to see how that form would have sort of been backed up, because they did finish quite closely. A lot of the horses in the Albert Bartlett, and there was obviously some further back in the field that I suspect could have run better than their positions maybe suggest. We've got the two bigs again, the big getaway, the big breakaway, Envoy Elan, and he's currently Antepost fab for the race. Now, they're saying it's going to be the Marsh. Again, I'll cover this in the next episode where I go in a bit more depth. It's just I know that Cheveley Park want to win an RSA. I feel like they want to be going down that route into a Gold Cup. Allaho last year obviously went Albert Bartlett, then went RSA, which is more of an obvious route. Envoy went for the Ballymore. The JLT Marsh could be more of an obvious route. And with Gordon Elliott, I think that's the way they want to go. But the RSA chase is a potential. You'd think that Gordon Elliott would have some other ammunition for the race, but we'll see how they go. Because Envoy, they've long talked about him as a Gold Cup horse. Would you be surprised if they decided to go up to the 3 mile route now? Well, I definitely wouldn't. Would we be surprised if they ran in the Marsh like the betting suggests? Well, no, obviously not. So you can see why he's in and around that sort of price, and why there's many people potentially give him a bit of a squeak for the race. So a lot to be learnt as the season goes on with horses like him. Champion Chase. Now this is one it's dumbfounded me, to be honest. Beginning of the last season, we were talking about the slower chase. We were talking about Politolog, Defi de Soy. Everyone was banging on about the Ryanair, which fair enough. And then he went and smashed it in the 2 mile division. Obviously, Chacon Poussard, Altior, Defi de Soy. We know Defi ran. That wasn't Defi on the day. We know it wasn't. Surely not. How good he's been the rest of the season. And this is a horse that he would have been going off favourite for the Champion Chase had these 3 all lined up. He hasn't even got a single vote for the Champion Chase next season. He has a big price. I'm not saying that he will definitely come here, but I just find it slightly surprising how many people have jumped ship from Defi de Soy. But at the beginning of last season, I don't think many people fancied him as a champion chaser, despite me making a few comments to the contrary. It's fairly obvious for me that this would be the sort of split, but I really did think that Defi would have had votes in here, so that's slightly surprising for me. Altior, definitely. I mean, the 8 to 1 still looks juicy. He's another year older though. I feel like the 9 to 2 last year Antepost looked better value. Chacon Poussoir obviously didn't make it to the festival. Looked good in open company. Do you really want to be taking that sort of price Antepost on a horse that doesn't turn up at the festival year after year? It's tricky. And then we're looking at bigger priced horses here that we think are probably going to go elsewhere. We don't know where they'll be. There could potentially be some value in there, but it's one of those races, isn't it? That you'd have to be hard pressed to have a confident view in there. I personally feel, and the fact that 80% of the field is split on this, and we've got the likes of Mr. Fisher, Fakir Duda, he's put the kettle on being mentioned in here. Well, he should have a bigger split there, shouldn't he? Spellings, I think, but it's an interesting one to say the least. Mare's Chase, obviously the newest race into the meeting. This doesn't surprise me in the slightest that it's a bit all over the shop in terms of thoughts. I think this is probably one of the most straightforward races for me as an Antepost punt. Benny Juju will win the Mare's Chase at Cheltenham next year. I cannot believe you can get 14 to 1 about it. Now, of course, there is the chance that she won't come to this race. I can't see why they wouldn't do it. I remember years ago with Vroom Vroom Mag, I backed her for the Ryanair. She never did that. She never went back over fences. She did her business somewhere else. But I feel like if there had been a Mare's Chase, that would have been Vroom Vroom Mag's. And I feel like Benny's that. I cannot see why they would not stick her in this race. She's a beast. We know she's a quick herder, but she's better over fences as well. I feel like she's a monster price. Salsaretta is the same ownership. Salsaretta was decent last year, but it was picking up novice events. That she's long been a highly regarded mare. This obviously is a division. Honeysuckle's not going over fences. Put the kettle on would make sense to come for this sort of race. The fact that she won the Arkle proper, if she does end up being impressive, maybe they're going to be thinking actual champion chase. And then there's a few others in there. I don't rate the chances of anything else in here of the other names. because I just think if Benny Juju comes in, she's going to absolutely hack up. So she's the sort of horse that I would be looking at this far out. Before any comments or bits and pieces come out, I'd be more than happy with 14-1 as an anti-post punt for a few quid. And obviously, if she doesn't end up here, you can go again. It's not as if her being taken out the betting is going to make everyone else shorten up significantly. I think the rest of the market would stay as it is. As it stands, a lot of us are not thinking the same. We're looking more towards the head of the market, and I do just wonder whether it is the way that the market's priced steers a few votes in these sort of races, where it is a well split thing. We just don't know this far out, do we? When we talk about it, but I think Benny, that's what my sort of logic in there. Cross country, this is exactly the way that it should be. Easy Sland will win. Easy Sland's a short price for the race this far out. Is what it is. It wins, so we can move on from that. Champion Bumper's a very hard race to call this far out. You think of the year after years of bumper winners. We get a lot of ex-pointers, especially, that come through, and there's some nice names that are in there that we quite fancy. Where we've got here, Gerhard or Gerard or however we're supposed to say it. When he's a 25-1 poke this far out, you can see there's only a couple of bookmakers that take a bets on anyway. These are the sort of things where you just chuck a tenner at them, anti-post, because everyone's talking about them, and if it ends up to be true, then get on them. But yeah, it's a difficult race to have any fancy on it. Kilcruit's only that price because it was mentioned in a preview last year, wasn't it? Anywho, we'll move on to the Marsh. We've already touched on Envoy Elan, and we'll see horses with multiple mentions across races. Even Shishkin's got a vote in here. The Big Getaway, again, potentially one of the RSA isn't just going to fill up everything else because they're going to be scared of Envoy. But if you look at the betting, Envoy's a 7-2 poke. Shishkin's not coming here. Honeysuckle's not coming here. And then you move into the Big Getaway, which has taken up the next vote there. Now, there are some nice types. Chantry House, Monkfish won't come here. Time Hill's not going over fences. Easy Work, decent runner behind Envoy Land. Could be a bit of a price. Classical Dream, again, we don't really know where they'll be going with him. Pick Dorhe, we know that Paul Nicholls has said that he fancies him this season, wherever he ends up. So I think Envoy Land, you can understand why is this percentage. He's a 7-2 poke. And again, when we were looking at Honeysuckle around about the 70-ish%. We look at Shishkin, 75-ish%. Envoy's overwhelming for the Marsh. 7-2 anti-post. I'm not telling you to steam in on it, but it's the sort of thing where you think, do you know what, we might as well start getting him on the team sheet early doors. And you look at those three even just mentioned there. I said it was 20 to 1-ish for the double, the first two. You then chuck in Envoy Elan as a 7-2 poke. All of a sudden, you're talking almost a 3-figure treble on horses that are most likely to be there. So, You couldn't disagree with that, but there's got to be something at a bigger price that could be interesting. I'll be very keen to find out where Pictor he's going. I'm hoping, I don't know, maybe Arkle. I feel like they talk about him that much that he's nice. That Arkle feels like it's the more prestigious of the races, but we'll have to see as we go on. Now, the Ryanair year after year is fraught with varying opinions. I feel like this race is getting a lot more respect now than it used to get. I think the Marsh is the same as that. It used to be that the Arkle and the RSA were the two, and it's nice that these mid-distance races, the races that are in between the 2 miles and the 3 mile divisions, are probably treated a bit more with it now. There's no reason in my eyes why we can't have those three levels, the 2 miles, the middle trip and the staying trip. I don't see why they can't all be great. Now, I know horses can excel over 2 miles, 3 miles, so they could do the whole distance, the whole range, but I prefer it when we're really honed in to having decent levels for all of them. And I think this speaks volumes again. Allaho, we were talking about the fact that the RSA, he running out the Albert Bartlett, the Ryanair could be the case for them, but you'd think he was so close to an RSA, drop him back. Is that really what they should be doing with him? I just think he was Albert Bartlett from a youngster. He is only a young horse. I'd be gold cupping him all day long, but that's just my view on it. Sam Crow, it would be an obvious one. Obviously, Marsh then onto this, but then again, Sam Crow, they were talking about Gold Cup. I know Gigginstown sponsor the race. I know Gigginstown wants to have a proper chance in the race, and he seems to be that one, fits the bill for all those bits and pieces. Just be interested to see what they do with him in the season, because you'd think they'd want to test his stamina at some point. So again, you can see that, why he would be there. Now, Deffy's got a reasonable amount of votes in here. You can see he's a bigger price for the Ryanair than he is for the Champion Chase. I still don't know why he's being written off so much from last season, but hey ho, it is what it is. Lost in translation, I think people are thinking he could drop back in terms of betting. We've only got a small sample of people voting for him on here, but it's balmy. Real Steel, again, ran really well in the Gold Cup. Probably would be better for a shorter trip, but not even picked up by anybody in here. Min's in there that won it last year. Deserves to be fav again, in my opinion. Melon, Obviously, ran so well in that Marsh as well. Again, you can see that middle trip probably is the place for him to go, unless they decide they've done novice chase with him and they drop him back over hurdles again. I don't know what the plan is. Angel's Breath, bit of a forgotten horse, lost his novice status last year. And Simply the Bets as well. I think he's one that's been mentioned by a couple of people, and he is a reasonable price, to be fair. But it's a long way out. We know it's a difficult race to pinpoint this far out. It looks fairly split in terms of the betting and where I think horses will be going and bits and pieces like that. I can see the whole Allaho thing, that dropping back in Triple, go and win a Ryanair. I hope they go Gold Cup, because I think for the horse's future that is the best thing for him, because I think he could be a genuine future Gold Cup horse, and that helps with Cheveley and the Envoy thing further down the line as well, I suppose. In the fact that if they get that monkey off their back, get the race done, then maybe they won't be looking just to shove all their novices and RSAs for the sake of it. Stayers Hurdle, I think Paisley is a huge price. Paisley had an excuse for last year. Got to be a line through it. But that said, it's still a worry all the same to have something up with them. Time Hill's got the majority of the votes there. Philip Hobbs has already confirmed that they are going to stay over hurdle, so this is where he will be coming. He's been nibbled a bit already. I still think the 16-1 about a horse that's confirmed to be running here, that ran so well in the Albert Bartlett. Like I say, I like the Albert Bartlett line into a stairs for the next year. It paid dividends with Penhill, you know what I mean? Harry almost did it. So yeah, I think Time Hill at 16 should be on everybody's Antepost books, regardless. And then we get the likes of Cider Burley, that's won handicaps at Cheltenham. Probably mark-wise, we're thinking now it's got to go for the stayers. Benny, again, small sample of votes in there. Price-wise, we know that she's a big danger if she does go for this sort of trip. Envoy's obviously not going there. Honeysuckle is staying over hurdles. She's more likely to come for a stayers than a champion hurdle, I suggest. I think she'll still go mares. Liz Nagar Oscar, last year's winner, hasn't even got a vote for it in here. Probably say maybe that it was a bit of a fluke. But, it is about where it should be, but I really do feel like Paisley Park, I think, will win. It's a long way away, but 7-1, I think, is a reasonable price, and I think Time Hill's a reasonable price at 16. I'd be happy to play the pair against the field. I can't really see anything upsetting me to suggest that they ain't going to be prominent in the betting for next year, and that does show it in the split across people as well. So, not just because the split agrees with what I'm saying, I feel like it validates it. I've obviously given my opinion on each of these races. Sometimes I don't agree with the way that the split looks, but we'll see. So, for example, here, the Mares Novice, we've got a similar split across two here, Gypsy Island, Queensbrook. Again, I can see the reasons behind it. Gypsy Island has already jumped a hurdle, hasn't won over them. She missed last season. She was well fancy for the race. Ticks all the boxes for it, but we haven't seen her over hurdles, and that's a bit of a concern. Queensbrook, again, it's a Mares Novice hurdle. We haven't seen them over hurdles. We haven't seen what they're going to be doing. But again, you can see the lines in there. Again, to reiterate what I've said with the stayers race, I'd rather be playing Paisley and Time Hill that are confirmed 100% to come for the race, and we know about them at the 7s and 16s, than maybe Gypsy Island and Queensbrook at 10s and 12s. But if they are the ones that we think are coming here, and we know that Connections have got reasonable records in the race, then it does make you think, you could play the pair in a block bet, and that may be the way to do it. My Whirlwind for Nikki Henderson, we know that they think a lot of her. The Glancing Queen was so good in the bumper the year before. That's Envoy Land's bumper. We're all raving about the form. Stayed over bumper for last season, but potentially could be a bigger price in there. And then there'll be a few others at bigger prices that probably do deserve a little bit of a mention. But yeah, you'd have to think on the bumper form, Gypsy Island would be a deserving favourite. Another one that might be worth getting on the slip for the sake of it, but obviously she missed all of last season, and I don't like that. I don't like someone that doesn't even make it to the race course, let alone go hurdling and then go back to bumpers. And there's a few maybe question marks, but you'd want her on your team sheet at some point. Triumph will be harder than the bumper to pick, because we don't really even know where the 4-year-olds will rank in each of the yards at the moment. It's more vibes and things like that have been said. So we can see it's 25-1 bar. Again, if there's a horse that's really, really well mentioned across a few pieces, you think it might be worth a go. We can see here that 2/3 of the votes are taken up by these two, and you're getting 25s and 50s across those two. So you just think, is it worth sticking them in a small anti-post bet just for the price of it, to take the punt? And of course, I mentioned it last season, and I'll mention it over and over again. Bet365 offer you cash out 95% of it. You back a horse at 50-1 anti-post for a race. If it flops on debut, it's not going to be much of a bigger price, and you will still be getting a reasonable cash out. So for a low risk investment, I think you could stick a tenner on, for example, Flying Scotsman at 50-1. I don't know what the price is with Bet365, but you back them at a big price. If they flop, then you just cash out. You get the majority of your stake back. Obviously, if they win, then you've got a great value bet. So these are probably the types of races where it might be worth taking a punt, but we're a long way out. You don't want to be sticking too much in, and you don't want to throw too many darts at it. I don't think Albert Bartlett appreciate it. I think he's got the profile of an Albert Bartlett horse. We know this is a hard race to call very early on in the season. We'll have to see how things go, and that's always reflected in the prices. But this is definitely a race where I think there's a few nice bumper horses. Typically, they're running at 2 miles. We get some point form in there as well that helps. But I feel like the Albert Bartlett Novice Hurdle, there's loads of horses at big prices. This is the dream of a race for me, I think, to be sticking some blocks in there. We can see there's lots of horses to this side that have been fancied in there. Basically, 2/3 of it are taken up by Appreciate It and Deploy the Getaway. It just looks, we don't really know where they're going to be going, do we? Let's be fair. I will be talking about the horses that I fancy for this race in another episode, but yeah, I can understand why this is split as the way it is. And I do Appreciate It, to be honest. He could be, like I say, Ballymore bound if Fernie Hollow goes supreme. They're the sort of ones that is well worth looking at any race market, because if you could get 16s any race and you're only getting 20s Albert Bartlett, if he ends up running well and he goes off as a 7-2 poke, are you really that annoyed you didn't get the 20s and you only got 16s? I don't think you would be. Maybe now at the time you might be, but you've got to think for the future. We can move on to the Gold Cup now, and this staggers me, to be honest. And again, I say that it staggers me. I can completely understand the thoughts behind it, but Top of the Game that won the RSA a couple of years back obviously beat Santini. Santini's probably franked that form in coming second in the Gold Cup, but Santini's had a whole season in open company. Admittedly, it was just the 3 races, but he's proved himself. Top of the Game missed last season. Top of the Game hasn't raced in open company. I can see, obviously, price-wise, we can see Top of the Game's twice the price of Santini and a bit more, but the fact that the vote is split like that slightly surprises me a little bit. But if you fancy Top of the Game to be winning a Gold Cup, then I suppose you lump him in the Hennessy at 8-1, don't you? But I wouldn't be thinking that way. Champ, of course, the way that he won that RSA, he definitely should be on everyone's shortlist for a Gold Cup. I just think Album Photo 10% surprises me, given that I thought he was a good winner of the Gold Cup last year. I thought it was a decent race, to be fair. I think he doesn't get the respect that he deserves, being a 2-time Gold Cup winner. He's still young enough to go and do it again. I think Album Photo is the one, or he is the one they've all got to beat. And then we've got like the usual ones in there, like Lost in Translation ran an absolute stonker last year. I think for me that proved he did stay the Gold Cup trip, which I was slightly worried about. But again, these are all mentioned horses that are well found in the market. Menela Indo's in there for a vote. Maybe Delta Works could be given a second chance. Again, that RSA form looks good because of what Santini did, but Santini was the one that did it. So, I mean, that's the way that I'm thinking about things to an extent. I mainly wanted to look at this for what you guys have voted, just to show what's in there. I will do another video that's more comprehensive, talking about races specifically and targets for races. We'll look historically at what horses we could have sort of picked from the previous season, which races we didn't really know who was going to win it until nearer the time, and then I'm going to suggest a few block bets to build up early in the season, and I might start sharing a few of my anti-post bets just so you guys know where I'm at before the season's kicked off. And if you want to stick a couple of quid on a couple, then go for it, and then we'll be interested to find your thoughts, what you've actually put some money on as well as what you fancy. And as I say, these was trying to look at the races as a division as opposed to genuine Cheltenham targets. And that's always hard to do, but it's interesting for some of the votes that were in there, like when we talk about the Top of the Games, Champs, those horses that got a decent mention in there. As I've said, it's not necessarily specifically the Gold Cup I want to know the winner of. I might be looking at your stay and chases, and that's probably where the split comes in. And if we're talking stay and chase events, we've got the Hennessy in there. Maybe that's why Top of the Game got those extra votes, etc., etc. But without waffling too much longer, I will do another follow-up to this. I appreciate you guys always getting involved in it. I think the main benefit of having a page with so many followers and such good interaction between us. We're all in this for the same reason. We all love horse racing. We all hope to make a few quid out of it on the side. Sharing our opinions and seeing the way that others are thinking is a really, really useful tool. It's sometimes very driven by the markets, and I say that with the utmost respect. I feel a lot of people might look at a market and that could be the suggestion to why they fancy something. But on the same token, we'll get some views at a market where someone will look at it and say, this horse is just too big a price, which is maybe why it gets a mention, as opposed to them, we fancy that horse to win a race. So it's very difficult without speaking to everybody individually about what their sort of backup thoughts are behind there. I try to interpret it as best I can, but if we all work together and look and make sure that we're all on the same radar, we're looking at the right types of horses, we're thinking for the right types of race, we're sharing the bits of news that we hear, which is what I aim to do. I try and be the sort of moderator to get that stuff across. Obviously, it's mostly driven by my opinions because I'm a bloody know-it-all, but it's just really good to get that, and the more interaction I get from you guys, the better content I can put out. And I'm going to stop now because otherwise I'll just keep talking all night. So thanks for anyone that's watched this far. Thanks for all your interaction. More comments below for how you think things have gone. And I'm going to do another video for this. I'm not quite sure when, but within the coming weeks, to talk more specifically about the races and what I think is going to be targeted there. We'll look to build some of those block bets I've mentioned. We'll look at some any race markets, and I'll be sharing a few of my Antepost bets as well. So as always, thanks for your support, and I'll see you on the other side.